Okay, our next speaker is Janet Fenner-Masson. She is a native Texan who graduated from the University of Texas at Austin in 1971 with a Bachelor of Journalism degree. Her interest in photography led her to a position as a photographer and document examiner trainee in Lucille Lacey's Question Document Laboratory in Houston. Ms. Fenner-Masson studied under and worked with Lucille Lacey for 8 years prior to opening her own laboratory in 1985. She's a regular member of the ASQDE and a fellow in the AAFSQD section, and she has been a diplomate of ABFDE since 1983. She continues to work full-time as a forensic document examiner in private practice, and she is one of the newest directors on the ABFDE board. Welcome, Janet.
Thanks.
Bring this up.
Yes.
Where is it? Let's just close that. I think I got it. Okay. And you're speaking on scanned images. How well do they depict the subtle features in handwriting? There you are.
Am I?
You're there.
There we go. Yes, ma'am. All right. We're going to go low-tech now. We've done all the statistics and everything, and we're going to go back to being bench workers. At least that's who this is intended for, most importantly for me. I decided to do this project because, as we all know, there are more and more cases in which what you get in are scanned images. It's not intended to be a study to determine how you should scan documents for your own use in your laboratory to preserve documents you've examined or anything like this. This has to do with how you should and whether you should examine documents that are only available in scanned images or in scanned form. Historically, there have been a lot of changes in documents over certainly my career and since documents have been produced. We used to see originals in almost every case. Both the question and the known documents were originals. There were carbon copies. At the Academy meeting earlier this year, we had to kind of explain what a carbon copy was to some of the newer folks who really weren't familiar with carbon paper and preparing, 4 and 5 carbon copies of things. NCR copies came along after that. There were photostats and photocopies, of course. And a photocopy that was produced when I first got in the field was really awful. Photocopies that are produced now are remarkably better. There then became the problem of fax copies, something we all had to address, was what do you do with fax copies? And now companies are storing everything as digital files. And you'll find banks destroy the originals instantly when they come in. Insurance companies also. It's startling to me how they just essentially scan everything and throw it away. So you may be in a position where the best evidence is the scanned image or a photocopy or something other than the original document. The original's been destroyed. It's no longer available. My question to myself was, attorneys will call up and say, I'm going to attach a file to an email, and I'm going to send it over, and I want you to examine it. Well, is that acceptable? Is that the best evidence? Do you want them to mail you a copy, or do you want them to send that digital file? What do you want to do? So that was sort of the impetus for me to start this. First, some definitions. I will use PPI, pixels per inch, in describing resolution. That's your resolution on the screen or your resolution for scanning, whereas DPI is the output. Dots per inch is your print. So they seem to be used interchangeably, but I like PPI. All right, lossless versus lossy file formats. TIFF files tend to be lossless. And when something is stored as a TIFF file, you're not going to lose information as you open and close it and that sort of thing. The information is not extrapolated so that bits of it are left out of the stored image. A PDF, which is an Adobe acronym, I have understood is always lossless also. This morning, Joe Parker, my friend and colleague, sent me an email saying, "You're wrong about that. I just got the thing and your slide is wrong." So he has done a lot of research, and hi, Joe. He's watching this, and he says that the scanner operator can choose to optimize the image in various ways and can choose, and they may lose information. So that is variable somewhat. At the time that the majority of the research was done for my project, Harris County, which is Houston, Houston is based in Harris County, Texas, scanned all of their official documents. This is their county documents and city documents, were scanned at a resolution of 200 pixels per inch in black and white mode. They were hoping at the time to go to 300 pixels per inch, but this was in 2010 through 2011. That was their standard thing. So that if you had warranty deeds that were filed with the county, any sort of property records that were filed with the county, they would scan them in at 200 pixels per inch in black and white. Now they've gone up to 300 pixels per inch, and they did that in about June of last year. So that's now been increased. The resolution has been increased. Their files are not compressed. They're all stored as TIFF files. And by the way, for those of you who don't know it, Houston is now the 4th largest city in the country. So yes, in the last few years. So I had a lot of problem finding information from bank personnel. And I think in general it's because they outsource it and they don't know. They don't know what it's scanned at, what resolution it is. But most of you know from the statements you get back from the bank that have the little images of checks and that sort of thing, they're not very good. Jane will report in a little bit on some other information that she's been able to get. So she was able to get more information than I did. But so far, everyone has been scanning in black and white. No continuous tone or grayscale and no color. Most of the organizations that I contacted, other than the county, they outsource their scanning. They don't do it in-house. They don't really know what the parameters are, at least the people I found. But now Harris County and a lot of organizations that are government organizations do their own scanning. So the project that I undertook was to take various colors of inks and various kinds of inks to make some samples of writing and to scan them in various ways. This is a list of the writing instruments that I used. I used a plain white bond paper for some of the writing and a ruled yellow legal pad paper so that you had some color, you had some lines, and then you also had just plain white paper. And listed also is the flatbed scanner that I used. I don't own any Hewlett-Packard, so 2 sample sheets were prepared. They were each scanned in color, in grayscale, and in black and white at resolutions of 100, 200, and 300 pixels per inch, which really covers the gamut of what I found any organization was using to store their documents. Each scan was stored as a TIFF file. I repeated that and stored each scan as a PDF file without any compression or anything. So they should have been straight scans. Then the black and white images, of course the color images and the higher resolution images were so big, particularly the color images were so big that I couldn't even get them to attach to emails very comfortably. But I took the black and white images and attached them to an email and emailed them to another address. And then stored them there, saved them. Then I took them and did the same thing again, sent them to another email address so that they had actually been transmitted twice and stored twice to see if that process made any difference to the image at all. This is a list of the characteristics that I looked at in handwriting. And of course, this is strictly handwriting. I didn't look at printed text or anything like that. The lightly written connecting strokes. My question is, if you get a scanned image and it looks like there may be a break in the line, is that in fact, can you rely on that, or is that not accurate? The stroke directions, which can be extremely important in examining handwriting. The crossbars of T's, are they left to right and right to left? The circular A's, are they clockwise or counterclockwise, and O's? That sort of thing was very important. The presence of initial and terminal strokes, how long they are, how tapered they are, how curved they are, diacritical marks, punctuation marks, dots on I's, are those going to be replicated? The overall line quality was one of the things that, of course, is so critical. And so much of the things that we see, like, for instance, with faxes, the line quality can appear to be just terrible, when in actuality, then you go look at the original and it's a very fluent, spontaneous writing. Letter designs, whether this scanning process changes letter designs in any way. The replication of the internal proportions of letters, the height to width ratios, and the components within the handwriting and letter designs, the height and spacing of various portions. These are the two sample sheets that I used. The one on the left has all the writing instruments all on white bond paper. The one on the right has the yellow ruled legal pad paper. Here are images with the color. On the left is the color 300 pixels per inch PDF, then the color pixels 300 pixels per inch TIFF. As you see, they get smaller and smaller as they're replicated because, of course, the size of the files. And then below that, you see the same thing in the black and white. You can see the differences in several things in there. For instance, in the top left, in the color image, can you see right at the top of the uppercase letter A that there's a fold in the paper? There is, and if you look at it, I think I have another image of it later where you can see that. You can certainly see the lines, right? The printed lines and the red line to the left. Well, look at the black and white image, even at 300 pixels per inch. You can almost not see any horizontal lines, and the vertical line, the red line, is very broken up. So there are a lot of things on the document that will not be replicated in black and white. Here's a color scan and a black and white scan at 300 pixels per inch. But notice you can still see, like, for instance, the direction of some of the crossbars in the E. You can see because the ink line connects over from the bottom of the E up, you can see the direction of that stroke. And even in the black and white scan at 300 pixels per inch. Here again, we have them at 200 pixels per inch, the same information. Here is 300 pixels per inch, the black and the red ink, the black and white and the color image. See how much more you can tell from the color image. And in fact, see the ending and the S and the top level or the top layer. And you can see that there's actually a very faint ink line up to the I dot. If you can see that, but in the black and white image, it's lost. And here it is at 200 pixels per inch. It's not nearly as clear. This is the same thing. It's not nearly as clear in 200 pixels per inch. And in 100 pixels per inch, these are each enlarged so they're comparable sizes. You can see it's completely lost. So here we go with the word hour. The middle one is, these are all, the middle one is the PDF at 200 pixels per inch. I couldn't find any difference in a TIFF file and a PDF file as far as what you see when you look at the image, when you open it up and look at the image. In the middle on this one is the grayscan image. And grayscan is better than a black and white image, not as good as a color image. Logical, right? Okay, here, if you look at this image of the A, do you see the, right here, there's a fold in the paper. See that? So there's a tremendous amount you can tell from a really high, well, I mean, 300 pixels per inch is not that high a scan, but it's probably the best you're going to get from a company. And from a color scan, you can get a tremendous amount. But look at the black and white image. It's not there. And the horizontal lines are not there. Here's 100, 200, and 300 pixels per inch, black and white. See the difference in the quality of the image? And here are some on bond paper. Now this, on the right side, the first one is 300 pixels per inch, black and white. That is pre-transmitting attached to an email. The next one is after the first email transmission. The next one is after the second. I couldn't see any difference in any kind of fundamental difference in the transmitting of the attachment to email. And here is the first one is a first generation photocopy of my check to the ABFDE for my annual fee, which I remember this time I didn't get dinged for a late fee. And the bottom one is what my bank sent me as an image. Crap. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I was just repeating what somebody said. I'm sorry. Yeah. Beep. Okay. The first on this one, the interesting thing to me that I really learned about this is the first one is a photograph, a digital photograph of the word is. The second one is a first generation photocopy, and the third one is a black and white scanned image at 300 pixels per inch. The first generation photocopy is significantly better. And in some cases, you may find that there is a first generation photocopy out there in addition to the scanned image. For instance, if you have a check that you're sending to somebody, I copy any check I send out and put it in my case file. It's going to be better than what the bank sends me. So the results. First, features such as letter designs, internal proportions, and that sort of things, relationships between letters, were still visible, still you could count on them, even images at low resolution. The black and white scans have a lot of deficiencies in their replication of subtle writing features, such as the presence of connections in letters, the length and character of initial and terminal strokes, diacritical marks. Line quality is lost, can be lost. The lower the resolution, the worse the image. Makes sense. Images scanned in color are consistently significantly better than those scanned in black and white. Grayscale is somewhere in between. Features of the paper are often not well depicted in black and white images. I didn't find any difference in the reproduction of the handwriting features between the images stored as TIFF files and those stored as PDF. Joe tells me that he's going to be doing a paper on it, so wait for that. It'll be there soon, I hope. I didn't find any noticeable deterioration in the email, in things that had been sent over the email. But my recommendations are, first, the original document is always best. We all know that. Get as close to the original as you can. If you have a first-generation photocopy, it may be a lot better than a black and white scanned image. The closer you get to the original, the better. If somebody tells me that they have a PDF or a TIFF file that they can send me attached to an email, or they can make a copy of that and mail it to me, I'm going to take the attachment to the email. Anytime you copy something, you lose something and you add something. Just remember that. You want to get as close back as you can. And remember what may be missing. Little connecting strokes and stuff may be just not replicated. Images of documents, though, captured by scanning often provide useful information. Don't discount them just because they're scanned images. When the original has been destroyed or is not available, the digital image may be the best evidence and it shouldn't be disregarded. And there are limitations inherent in the examination of scanned images, but if they do it at high resolution, and especially if they do it in color or even using grayscale, a lot can be said about the handwriting in my judgment. I will say that just a couple of weeks ago, I did find that there's one organization that does at least scan some documents in full color. So I think there's a movement toward improving the resolution at which they're scanning things and even going to color. So just be aware that because they aren't doing it right now, they may be doing it in a few months. And as they improve, things will get better. So, okay, thanks. Any questions? Brian.
In addition to the loss of detail, I'm wondering if you've encountered any instances where there's a halo effect around all of the words. I have a case right now where that seems to be happening on every single check, and I'm wondering in your research if that occurred.
I've seen it in some casework, but it was not. I didn't replicate it on any of my research projects. But I have seen it, and particularly with bank documents. I don't know why. Maybe Jane can respond to that. Yes, John.
Talking about the proliferance of digital images and seeing them more and more in casework, and about reduction in the appearance and the quality of, I mean, basically emailing a file that you're not affecting in terms of its size by reducing that file is no different than taking a photocopy and walking it across the hall and handing it to someone. I mean, as long as you're not affecting the size of that file, as long as you're not doing that file, you're just moving it from one place to another. But just an anecdote. Oftentimes when I'm asked to look at digitals where the original no longer exists, for instance, checks, which are commonly now destroyed after scanning by banks, I'll specifically ask for the bank's best resolution in their native format so that I can see it in its best quality. And oftentimes that's found to be pretty easy with a cooperative bank because it's just a matter of emailing you the information. But I will say this, that I did have one archivist who brought the image up on his screen, printed it out, and then scanned it and emailed it to me.
Yes.
So you have to be careful of that.
They don't get it. They think they think a scanned image is an original. They really don't get it, and you have to have a lot of patience to explain it to them.
Before we move on, there are 3 comments.
Okay.
3 tweets. The first is PDF is definitely not lossless.
Okay.
Acrobat's primary objective is to create a portable document format and does so at cost. The next is, we have seen instances where line segments within a signature were substituted with graphic font elements. And last, in addition to loss of fine details, black and white images can also falsely darken faint markings that may not be part of the signature.
You can add or take off. Mine all kind of diminished, but I have seen them also where they increased. So. Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Our final speaker before the break is Ms. Jane Lewis. She is certified by the ABFDE, a member of ASQDE, a director representing the QD section of the Academy. Is everybody all right? Just Peter? Okay. And a member of the Midwestern Association of Forensic Scientists. In 1985, Ms. Lewis finished an internship in the QD section of the Secret Service lab in Washington, D.C. She graduated with a Master of Forensic Science degree from George Washington University and obtained a job as a document analyst with the FBI in the Hoover Building in D.C. Ms. Lewis soon moved up the National Mall to the Secret Service lab, but the lure of beer and bratwurst was too strong. I don't write this stuff. And she found herself back home at the Wisconsin State Crime Lab in Milwaukee. 23 years later, Ms. Lewis retired from the Milwaukee lab and moved on to greener pastures, working in private practice in Milwaukee. Welcome, Jane. She will be speaking also on current bank check scanning practices to continue with the theme. Can you help bring it up? I'm bringing it up. I know what you mean. Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Well, we need to go back to check 21, back to 2004. So, let's go to the next slide. Oh, wait. Is that how you feel about? Yes, that's how we feel about check 21. So check 21 started in 2004, and it really changed everything for document examiners, right? So we don't get the original checks back anymore. The banks thought it was great, and they love it, and it's all very efficient for them, but it's very bad for us. And so I decided to I was so inspired by, we know that Check 21 is an acronym for check clearing from the 21st century, and it permits the transmission of electronic images from bank to bank instead of physical checks being transferred. And I was very inspired by Janet Fenner-Masson's presentation that she just gave to you, but she gave it in 2011 at the American Academy in Chicago, and I thought, oh, that is the best thing. I wonder what my bank is doing. So I went home and tried to figure out what my bank and other banks in Milwaukee and then around the country. I got some statistics from a bank in Germany and one in Canada. But the bankers were very uncooperative. But these are the questions that I asked them. What resolution are your checks being scanned at? Typically between 100 ppi and 300 ppi. Is the image type black and white or grayscale? Are the images saved as JPEG or TIFF files or something else? What's the make and model of your scanner? And what's the name of your bank? Some banks did not want to tell me the name of their name. Don't use my name. I'll tell you what we do, but don't use my name. JPEGs are an acronym for Joint Photographic Expert Group Format. And then TIFF is, we all know, it's Tagged Image File Format, which is a lossless file format. And some banks would say, well, we save X9.37. And that's an ANSI standard for the electronic exchange of the images of checks by banks. Only 17 banks, I think I contacted 50, and I got 17 to cooperate with me. So it gives you an idea. They really do not want to reveal what they're doing, and as Jan said, I don't think they know. They either don't know or they don't want to tell. They do outsource quite a bit of the scanning. 10 banks scanned in black and white. 6 of those scanned in grayscale. 1 bank from Germany used 24-bit color. 8 of them used 200 ppi resolution. 4 of them used 300 ppi resolution. And the 4 remaining banks used an array of varying resolutions. 6 banks used TIFF file formats. 5 used JPEGs. Other miscellaneous file formats reported was the X9.37, CDI, bitmap, and PDF. The scanners used by the banks were generally these little tabletop scanners. There's a really giant scanner used in a check processing facility I'll show you, but Unisys SmartSource, Canon, and TellerScan TS230 were the little scanners. And just for some reference, so the Wisconsin State Crime Lab where I used to work, they scan typically at 300 ppi for documentation purposes, but for analytical purposes, 1200 ppi cropping into the area of interest. So here's a cute little tabletop check scanner at a branch bank in Milwaukee. And it's made by TellerScan. And this little cute thing next to it is called a check jogger. So that's a little check jogger, and it shakes up the checks and evens them up so that they can be fed through the little over here. So those two work as a team, the jogger and the check scanner. And there's a giant document check jogger at a processing facility. So you put your checks and deposit slips in that thing, and whoa, they get all shook up. They do. There's another view of it. And then it goes into this giant check scanner and is imaged with that. So I followed Janet Fenner-Masson's lead with just showing you what the images look like. I have a packet of checks from Greenfield Police Department, so I used their fake checks to construct these images to just show you. So here's images of check, black and white, 100 ppi. Here's a 2-time enlargement of that. Here's a check, black and white, 200 ppi. We're going to get better. 300 ppi and 2-time enlarged, and black and white at 600 ppi. But we get much better once we hit the grayscale, which gives quite a bit more detail. Grayscale imaging, 100 ppi, 200 ppi at 2-time enlargement, 300 ppi, 8-bit grayscale, 2-time enlarged, and 600 ppi. 24-bit color. Only one of the banks did this, so I would love to see more of the banks using color, but out of all the banks I talked to, only the one bank in Germany scanned in color. And here's 100 PPI, 200 PPI, 300, 600, and 2 times. And then I wondered if there was any visual difference between a grayscale image in TIFF file format and the JPEG file format. So just put them side by side for you, and nothing too significant, at least in this initial scan of both of those. And that's a very beautiful bank in Milwaukee with a pretty gargoyle. It's very pretty, and that's me. And any questions?
We have one question online for both Janet Masson and Jane Lewis. Some institutions will scan and microfilm documents simultaneously. Do you know how common this practice is?
In my group, it was very uncommon. Nobody admitted to microfilming anything.
In mine either. No one does. I didn't find anybody who does microfilm anymore.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane, are there no other questions? Okay.